Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Porsche Taycan Turbo. It has 671 brake horsepower, 627 pounds-foot of torque, a 0 to 62 mile/an-hour time of 3.2 seconds, and an 800-volt power supply. The only thing it hasn't actually got is, well, a turbo.
Or an engine, actually, because as I'm sure you know, this is Porsche's first ever all-electric car. And to tell you the truth, it's brilliant. This is a truly exceptional EV and one that finally shows Tesla that it's not going to have it all its own way in the electric car revolution. This time, the dinosaurs are planning for what comes after the Ice Age.
All of this marks a fantastic achievement for Porsche. But here's the thing, making a world-beating electric car is very different to making a car worthy of the Porsche dynasty. There's more to the latter than sci-fi interiors and a sub 3.5 second 0 to 62 mile/an-hour time. The Taycan must still be a proper Porsche. But how do you do that when half the DNA, the engine, is missing? Can you even do that? It's a good question, and one where the answer doesn't come straight away, because first, you need to get over the novelty factor of what's in place of the engine.
Coming from someone who's driven a fair few electric cars over the last few years, and some really quick ones at that, I've got to say that I never ever get tired of the sheer surge of smooth, instant, linear power that you get from the really quick ones like this thing. I've got to have my seat back in an even more upright position just to give my neck muscles a rest from the onslaught of G-forces. The translation for Taycan, incidentally, is spirited young horse, and, well, I can see where they get the spirited part from. This thing is rapid.
And let's not forget, this is just the turbo version. While both have colossal 800-volt architectures, the Turbo S has an additional 80 brake horsepower and 148 pounds-foot of torque, enough to shame even the maddest of ice-powered supercars away from the lights. But it's only after you get past this organ-punishing speed that you begin to notice how well-rounded the whole powertrain actually is.
For example, there's 2 gears on the rear axle. First gear is for those headline-grabbing acceleration figures, while second gear is for more long-legged, relaxed cruising. And as a result, it feels more natural, more polished as a powertrain. You haven't got one planetary gear trying to do everything. I have heard an argument that all electric car powertrains feel pretty similar to one another, but there's no doubt that this is one of, if not the best example of them. However, my main concern about it is how you're going to get the charge into the car when you're out on the move, because if you want the super fast charging where you get 80% charge in less than half an hour, you need the 350 kilowatt chargers. And the Ionity network that provides them, at least in the UK, is pretty sparse. There's only about 11 of them dotted around the country, and although you will be able to charge up at Porsche dealerships in future, you can't quite do that yet. So the Tesla supercharger network, which has got far more sites, does seem to be the better bet, and Porsche, or whoever does the charging, needs to catch up a bit there.
From a powertrain point of view then, it's encouraging to see the Taycan do things slightly differently to its rivals, even if the charging network hasn't quite caught up yet, because doing it differently has always been a Porsche hallmark, and it's something that continues in the Taycan's cabin. Sure, there's similarities with other electric cars in here. The sheer amount of displays and touchscreens don't feel particularly Porsche, and there's no doubt in my mind that regardless of what the brand says, physical heating and aircon controls will always be superior to digital equivalents, as will a tangible instrument binnacle with real dials. But hold on, because there's still Porsche on the inside.
Look through the press release and they talk about things like how the cabin design was inspired by the original 911 and that the instrument cluster is wider than the steering wheel, just like it was in 1963. But the things I'm interested in are the bits that you interact with, such as the steering wheel, which with its exposed screws and drive mode selector and really rather solid feel, it's just like a 911. It feels the same in your hands.
In fact, it's not just the steering wheel, but the whole cabin rising up around you. The peerless visibility, the two humps on either side of the bonnet that are always in view. Even the smell is like a 911. There's definitely an appreciation of the details in here. And that's good, because it allows you to concentrate on, arguably, the most important part of a Porsche.
This car is packed with technology, and much of that is to make it handle like a Porsche should. So you've got air suspension, rear wheel steering, active roll stabilization, torque vectoring plus, and it all talks to each other using Porsche's new 4D chassis control. It is monumentally complicated and heavy, like really heavy.
Add all of this to the excess weight from the batteries, and the curb weight is 2.3 tons. That's more than a Mercedes-Benz S-Class and over twice the weight of the 1963 911.
The weight isn't that much different to a Panamera, so naturally you'd think, oh, it's going to handle like a Panamera. But no. It's in a completely different league. 2.3 tons or not, electric car or not, this is a lesson in how to make a big car handle. It has properly moved the game on.
It may house a number of Panamera-derived components, but there's several key differences. For example, the Taycan is around 3 centimeters wider, the wheelbase is shorter, the centre of gravity is lower, and the air suspension uses a more advanced design. It all adds up to deliver a driving experience that you can scarcely believe belongs to a car this hefty.
The air suspension is a real highlight because even with the 21-inch Mission E design alloy wheels, which look fantastic and are fitted to this car, you've still got a choice of a nice, smooth, cosseting ride comfort in normal mode and full-on torture chamber punishment in the Sport Plus setting. I mean, it is very firm, but then it needs to be because of how much this car weighs. But trust me, it's worth it.
Owing to all those low-slung batteries, the Taycan has the lowest centre of gravity of any Porsche in the range. This means damn near zero body roll at road speeds. Team this with a neutral balance that glides from a gradual breakaway of traction at the front to manageable slides at the rear, and it is streets ahead of any other electric car on sale today.
I mean, listen, I won't pretend that it feels exactly like a 1.2 ton sports car or even exactly like a 911, because there are times when you can feel the weight. But honestly, I have never driven a car where there's a bigger discrepancy between how much it feels like it weighs for 95% of the time and how much it actually weighs. You know, here's something that I really wasn't expecting, because as I'm coming into corners with this car, I have noticed myself sometimes just subconsciously looking for gear shift paddles behind the steering wheel that obviously don't exist, but I've almost convinced myself, because of how engaging this car is to drive, that I'm in a petrol sports car with a gearbox. The steering itself is surprisingly delicate and precise, and the front end has that trademark 911 bite. It is an utterly stunning thing to drive on a twisty, cambered country road. It handles itself truly remarkably.
For many, the emergence of electric cars is an opportunity to reset, to start afresh and deliver something completely different and better than what came before. But what I like about the Taycan is that it doesn't try and reinvent the Porsche. Instead, it's an adaptation of what there's always been, just using slightly different ingredients.
The result is a car that, for me, is the finest EV on sale today and one of the very best sports saloons, period. But more importantly than that, and despite the colossal weight and the total lack of an engine, is that it still feels and behaves and goes like a Porsche should. And I think that is what we were all hoping.